Basically, what the big mistake we made is we got complacent. And in Bitcoin, you just cannot afford to be complacent about anything. Instead of the millennial orange pilling his dad, my dad, who's a software engineer and already hated central banks, found Bitcoin first and then introduced me to it. This is what people should bear in mind. If you do lose your Bitcoin, it will continue to punch you in the face forever, right? We're still early. There's still plenty of time to stack. 99% of the planet still don't know what all us crazy people are talking about, right? So plenty of time to win more than once with Bitcoin. I've been running around kind of calling myself the luckiest man in Bitcoin, right? And that's how I like to sort of see myself now, right? Imagine having a dad that knows all of that stuff and can teach you Bitcoin. If that's not lucky, I don't know what is. Because one, when you buy a Treasury company stock, you don't own any Bitcoin. Your stock ownership gives you no claim over the Bitcoin that they buy. People were buying that at $9. It now trades at 75 cents. And I'm thinking, guys, man, imagine full porting your entire pension into a web design company.
Hi, Rick. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Yeah, I'm great, man. Great to be back. It's been a couple of years since I was last on the podcast, but yeah, I've been looking forward to this one, man.
I want to actually show this to people because it's been so long, and it has never been that long actually, with people that have been on and then come back on. Like the period between your first and second appearance has never been that long with any guest. And so I want to show this to people because it was a very early episode. I actually looked it up. It was my 18th episode. So it's been one of my very, very, very first episodes. This has been you. And I think there we purely talked about the 25 Bitcoin lost. I think we only talked about self-custody and your 25 Bitcoin lost. And this is one of your first interviews you've did after you actually lost them. So I don't know, maybe it's fun for people to see what happened after 2 years now, and the recovery of losing 25 Bitcoin, which back then was already a lot, and now it's like even a whole lot more.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving, man, right? Like if you this is what people should bear in mind. If you do lose your Bitcoin, it will continue to punch you in the face forever, right? Because at some point I'm gonna be sitting there like, damn, that was $25 million or whatever. I mean, I'm joking a bit, right? Like I tend to not focus on that sort of stuff. I think one of the best things I did was quite quickly drew a line under it, right? Like sometimes stuff happens, you have to just take the L, accept it, and figure out, okay, what's next? How do you move forward? Because it'd be really easy, right, to just get so focused on that and never forget about it and let it sort of, ruin your life a little. I remember at the time thinking about, do you know that guy, the story, James Howells, the guy with the hard drive that went into the tip?
Oh yeah, that you mean into the where he still searches it and had bounties for people to find it?
Yeah, and look, I had a huge amount of sympathy for him. That's awful. But even 10 years later, he's still trying to debate with the council. Will you let me dig in the waste disposal and go through it? And I just think, oh man, imagine I spent the rest of my life trying to hunt that Bitcoin down. It could end up driving myself crazy. So, I figured we're still early. There's still plenty of time to stack. 99% of the planet still don't know what all us crazy people are talking about, right? So plenty of time to win more than once with Bitcoin.
Absolutely, 100%. And for the few people that haven't seen the first episode, I imagine it's actually quite a lot of because it has been so long, and the podcast was basically just getting started back then. Maybe give us some brief overview outside of the 25 Bitcoin, who you are, and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Sure, yeah. I'll give you the shortest overview I can, which is me and my dad were super lucky. We found Bitcoin back in 2013. And we just dove straight down the rabbit hole. It's kind of interesting because he actually orange pilled me. So instead of the millennial orange pilling his dad, my dad, who's a software engineer and already hated central banks, found Bitcoin first and then introduced me to it. And we just spent, oh man, I mean, countless hours on the phone every day for months on end. Like we were just instantly hooked in. And then we did a pretty good job of holding on to a decent stack of Bitcoin for the next decade, right? So we took self-custody of our Bitcoin, so we didn't lose it to Mt. Gox getting hacked, and we didn't get blown up by FTX and all those other crazy exchanges. And we'd learned enough about Bitcoin to recognize, all the shit coins are a waste of time and NFTs. We were never going to lose our money on that rubbish. Um, and so, yeah, the whole thing was going quite well. 10 years, we were still holding on to 25 Bitcoin. I mean, I've got some stories like everyone else, right? Like, I think at some point I changed the exhaust on my car, and that probably cost like 2 Bitcoin. And, you look back and think, oh my God. But we did well to keep hold of most of it. And yeah, after 10 years, we decided we'd go on this trip to El Salvador, right? Because why wouldn't you want to go and check out what's going on over there? And it was kind of like a trip of a lifetime celebration of our Bitcoin journey. And man, that's where this our lives turned into an insane like Netflix episode, right? It's so bizarre to talk about, but on the last night of the conference, we were all like fired up and excited. So we rushed back to our Airbnb to start playing with a Bitcoin project that we'd been building ourselves, right? And we needed to transfer some funds into Lightning, do some test payments, all this sort of stuff. And there we were, man, like thousands of miles from home in El Salvador, of all places. And we discovered that unfortunately we'd been hacked. And someone had got hold of our seed phrase and wiped out the whole stack of 25 Bitcoin. And yeah, that was quite a kick in the nuts, is probably the best way I could describe that. And what I will do, right, is I'll share some of the mistakes I made, right? Like I've explained it at length before, but it's always valuable for maybe people that need to maybe think about their own security more. So basically, what the big mistake we made is we got complacent, right? And in Bitcoin, you just cannot afford to be complacent about anything. So we'd done the right thing by taking self-custody. But back when we were first buying our Bitcoin, there weren't hardware wallets, there weren't, metal plates or even better, metal washers to store your seed phrase on. So we did the best thing that we thought we could do at the time, which was we used an open source password manager called KeePass, right? So it's not like a centralized password manager like LastPass or some, third party company. It's actually a piece of open source software that you host on your own device, right? It's totally self-sovereign, and it stores all your passwords. So we kept our passwords in a KeePass file, and we also encrypted that file. So you'd need a password to get into it anyway. Now, that's one way of taking self-custody and not putting your seed on metal. But obviously, if you have a file like that living on a hard drive and that hard drive fails, or you lose your computer, then you need to back it up. So my dad, being a software engineer, is pretty used to this sort of stuff. He's like, you have to back up important files. So what he did is he backed it up to the cloud, which obviously we all know now, never ever store your seed online. That's a crazy thing to do. But that's what we did. And it wasn't an encrypted file. And obviously the cloud storage was encrypted as well. You needed a password to get into it. So how did we get done then? Well, what we learned later through like working with the police and different, investigatory bodies in the UK was they said, well, guys, did you know that both your name and your dad's name and your home address and every Bitcoin you've ever bought and every transaction you've sent is being circulated and sold on the dark web? Because what we never realized at the time was we had bought our Bitcoin from Mt. Gox before it got hacked. And when it got hacked, we thought, oh, phew, we're in self-custody, didn't affect us. What we never realized is that the hackers made off with the Mt. Gox coins, but they also made off with all their KYC data. So, that stuff's been sold over and over and over again on the dark web, including our information. So I can't actually prove that this is what happened, but it seems like it was probably a targeted attack, right? Someone had information that said we had a decent stack of Bitcoin, and they thought, let's go and see if we can get into these guys. And long story short, they've brute forced their way into our cloud storage. Then they brute forced their way into the KeePass file. And as you know, if someone has your seed, you're about to lose all your Bitcoin, and they took the lot, and that was that really. So a couple of things. don't store your seed online anywhere. Use a hardware wallet and a metal plate at the absolute bare minimum, and keep your seed offline. And also, if you're going to create passwords for things, make sure they're strong enough, because that's what really let us down, is the password for the KeePass file and the password for the cloud storage didn't have enough entropy. So, I mean, it could have just been a script kiddie who brute forced this with some free tools he got off the dark web. Um, and that's all she wrote, really. Yeah, pretty savage experience.
Can actually the police do anything in that moment? Like, is there anything where there's an extreme advantage of like going to the police?
So, look, this is the advice I'd give to anyone who does get hacked is, look, I'm not a big fan of law enforcement at the best of times, right? But the one thing that they can do for you is if you manage to track the coins, right, and you discover that they end up on a centralized exchange like Coinbase, Binance, any of these, then the police actually can contact those exchanges and say, listen, those are stolen funds, please freeze them. And once they're frozen, it means the attacker can't run off and, take them elsewhere. And then if you can prove ownership of that Bitcoin, either by signing with private keys or purchases from exchanges, then you might get them back. So, and what I would say, actually, the whole experience was crazy. The police are far more sophisticated with tracing Bitcoin than I would have given them credit for before seeing what they could do. So, our funds were mixed after they'd been stolen with Wasabi coin joins. Now, I don't want to get too technical about this. Coin joins are always trying to unpick a coin join. It's always based on heuristics. You'll never have like definitive proof over who owns what address. But you'd be surprised what they can do with chain analysis tools to try and unpick those funds. So, for example, in our case, they tried to mix such a large amount of funds that when it comes out the other side of these joins, there are some methods they could use to try and say with some probability, those are probably your coins. Some of the coins, though, one thing that was interesting, some of the coins got swapped into Monero, and the police kind of just gave up. When it got swapped into Monero, they kind of just said, okay, right, there's nothing left to follow, which was interesting. And that was it, really. Yeah, I was impressed by them. They helped us. But unfortunately, our attackers, I think, were quite sophisticated. So we didn't get any funds back. I mean, the fact that they all went through coin joins, I don't think this was this hacker's first rodeo.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you talked about that, I just remembered we had once, I forgot his name. I have to research and put it on the episode later on. Basically, he does as a job, play detective on the Bitcoin network, where if someone loses it, if someone lost a Bitcoin, he goes in and tries to recover them and figures out where is the transaction going. And he told about a few stories where he actually cracked some cases. And then it's once you can assign a Bitcoin address to something tangible, like an IP address, somewhere you can tell the police, look, here, there are Bitcoin, it's that address, go there, crack the door open, which was interesting for me because I never considered that before, that there's some, I mean, obviously there's advantages to law enforcement. There's advantages do all those things, but also for Bitcoiners, it's chain analysis is always very critical scene. But there is always a good side and a bad side to I guess most of things.
Yeah, I mean, one of one thing that was amazing way before the police got involved was the amount of support we got from the Bitcoin community. Like, people were sending me transaction graphs, trying to chase the funds around. And actually, shout out to Keon Rodriguez, one of the Samurai developers, because the Samurai team just jumped all over it. Like, they were chasing those funds. Those guys are extremely skillful. So, I owe them a real amount of gratitude, because it was so helpful then when we had to explain the case. I actually had, instead of just standing in front of the police going, oh, I don't really know what happened, we had quite a detailed blow for blow account of where the funds had gone, and that let the police sort of do their thing. And shout out to Keon. I mean, he's now facing 5 years in jail for money transmission because of the Whirlpool privacy service they built. And I have a lot of respect for those guys, right? You know, they were out there building really important privacy tech, and it's sad to see what's happening to them. Hopefully, when sentencing comes, I think we just saw CZ get pardoned for the same thing, money transmission. So, I mean, there's maybe a bit of corruption going on there, right? Like who's paying for what to get out of jail? But you know, fingers crossed it sets a precedent for those guys, and they can get free as well.
Interesting also, I think for us is like, I think the story behind the 25 Bitcoin, we've covered it very well in the first episode, but maybe interesting now is kind of, what have you learned from that over the past 2 years? What have kind of like happened within your life the last 2 years that it kind of happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been running around kind of calling myself the luckiest man in Bitcoin, right? And that's how I like to sort of see myself now, because like Bitcoin taught me anything, it's that it allows you to create your own luck, right? So obviously, you know, it was a brutal experience to lose all of your money, right, all in one go. Um, but I was lucky to be part of the Bitcoin community. You know, the amount of support we received from complete strangers was quite a profound thing. It will change your outlook on life and that sort of thing. And I felt really lucky that actually, you know, I'd lost all of the Bitcoin, but what I hadn't lost is all the research I'd done into Bitcoin and all the thousands of hours I'd spent studying it. So, you know, I was lucky that I'd gone on that journey with my dad, because I recognized it's still unfathomably early. And I strongly believe that for a few reasons. The first would be, you know, Bitcoin, I think, will last for thousands of years, if not indefinitely, and we're only in year 16. So, you know, maybe don't worry too much about being really late. And then when you watch gold, you know, recently this year, I think added 10 trillion to its market cap, and you realize that's 4 times bigger than Bitcoin's market cap. We are still incredibly early. So I guess I realized that, yeah, man, listen, Bitcoin changed my life once, but it's so cool. It can actually change your life more than once in just one lifetime. So I feel lucky that it's available. And I realize the more you lean into Bitcoin, the luckier you get, right? And I know you've experienced this yourself, Robin, with the podcast, right? The more you get involved with Bitcoin, the more you dig into it, the better. So there is one thing though that I've changed in my approach, that I think is maybe valuable for people, which is I was that guy. You've seen the meme with the guy in like a spaceman outfit lying on like an old mattress in a cheap flat, right, waiting for the moon. Well, that was me for that 10 years, right? Like really hodling hard, like not spending as much as I could, and with no plans to really use my Bitcoin. I was just hodling it. And what I realize now is, you know, I look back and I think, you know, that was a sizable amount of money, but, you know, there was loads of trips that I didn't go on, certain holidays I didn't take, or certain experiences that I didn't allow myself to enjoy because I was delaying my gratification so aggressively. And it sort of dawned on me afterwards, having lost it, like, wow, you know, if I'd you know, we had over $1 million worth of Bitcoin. I could have peeled off 5 grand and gone on a nice holiday and made some memories with my family and loved ones, but I didn't because I was hodling so hardcore. So one really important thing and a different approach I'm taking now is I spend my Bitcoin a lot more, because I realized Bitcoin is not your scarcest asset. Your scarcest asset is your time. You know, if you hodl in all the way to your deathbed, then you've made a mistake. Life is for living and enjoying, and Bitcoin is just better money, a better tool. Just use it as money, save in it. If you want to save for your future, do it in Bitcoin. But other than that, go and live your life. You know, don't delay everything.
I love that message, and I think it's very hard for Bitcoiners to learn that message because we are always hearing hodl, don't sell. Like we always hear the messages, what will Bitcoin be worth long term? And so maybe we even go in the wrong side that our time preference is too low, that our time preference is like, so we don't want to give up on our Bitcoin, that we don't want to spend anything. And it was super hard for me. You can remember you were at the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way and Tony are the reason why I started accepting Bitcoin as payments. And now most of my income is actually in Bitcoin. Over 50% is in Bitcoin because I now on the other side, I'm like, if you want to give me fiat, you have to have a really good reason why I even have to take that money. Obviously, for example, YouTube ad revenue and all of those, like I don't have a leverage with them. But outside of that, like I only take Bitcoin whenever I can. And so you come naturally to the point where you have to spend your Bitcoin because you have to live if most of your income is in Bitcoin and your fiat income is not enough to cover your fiat bills. And also spending Bitcoin is a thing where you like only one freelancer of mine actually takes Bitcoin. The second sometimes, and the third not. And so it's like, I had to come to the realization that I have to sell some Bitcoin to exchange it for euros, dollars, whatever, to cover fiat bills. And this was the first time ever. And it was like, I don't know, like a couple of months ago, maybe half a year ago or something like that, for the first time ever where I had to like sell my Bitcoin, and it hurted so much. But after I did it, I was like, oh yeah, I have those Bitcoin and I can use them. It's money and it's fine and it's okay. And this was like, this was huge for me. It was like really hard for me, like mentally, emotionally. I really did not want to sell them.
Do you know what? I think maybe it's as easy as just reframing things because you're not really selling your Bitcoin. That implies that you're getting rid of your Bitcoin because you'd rather have dollars. But that's not the case. You know, you might swap into dollars briefly because whoever you're dealing with wants to receive them. But actually what you're doing is just spending your Bitcoin. You're just using your money. And it's not meant, money is not meant to just sit there forever. You know, at a certain point in time, you should exchange it for experiences or improving your quality of life and all of these amazing things. And you know, I love the Bitcoin way, right? Because they're pretty extreme. They're like, unless you accept Bitcoin, we won't work with you because they just they just don't want to operate in the fiat system anymore. And yeah, that's what I mean about the more you lean in, the more you lean in, and the more you try and live on a Bitcoin standard. It's kind of spooky, kind of weird how your life just gets better quickly, right? It really is that weird cheat code, and I just wish more people would get into using it because you'll also end up more secure and more skillful, right? Like how many people just buy on an exchange, send to a hardware, send to cold storage, and do nothing else, right? Like the more you experiment, the more skills you'll gain. So if we're going to move to a world now where, you know, we run on a Bitcoin standard, it's going to be an enormous advantage if you already know how to run a node, how to spin up your own Lightning node, how to spend sats, how to use, you know, non-custodial solutions for maybe long-term storage and what the trade-offs are, maybe using something custodial just for spending money. Because if we move that way, like that's how business is going to be done. So if all you've learned to do is hodl, you've kind of only taken 20% of the journey, right? There's so much more you can do, and use Vexel as another peer-to-peer app. You know, and listen, I don't find it hard to work with people who accept Bitcoin anymore. In fact, the most talented people tend to accept Bitcoin. So, uh, yeah, come and join us. Like it's fun over here with the psychopaths, right?
100%. I don't know, I love your story because I just thought about that when you were telling about your story about the 25 Bitcoin and then like what you've done with that. It would have been so easy for you to go full retard. I mean, to go like, oh, F Bitcoin, like self-custody is flawed. Like I knew what I was doing and I still got screwed over. Like you you could have gone in a very different direction, but you chose a good direction. You chose to learn the right things from it. And I think, I don't know, like you probably heard that a lot from other people, but I think that's extremely good to see that even though, you kind of got, I always come back to the Spider-Man meme of like, with great power comes great responsibility. And there's some mistakes in there. And then there is some good things in there where, of course, if you have self-custody and you lose your Bitcoin, even though if someone else stole it, you gave them the opportunity to steal it. And so it's in your responsibility and you never played the victim role, which is, I think, really, really strong. I just wanted to highlight that because I think you could have gone easily full retard.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. You know, like I don't know. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life, right? So I think I've always been fairly comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing, you know, where I stand. But I've had, you know, as most entrepreneurs will tell you, I've had multiple failures. You know, I've had a few wins, but I've had a load of losses along the way. So I think I was okay with like dealing with loss. And look, sometimes in life you have to just take the L, right? Like we made an absolutely schoolboy error with a lot of money and it came and bit us in the ass. But it doesn't do me any favors to play a victim or feel sorry for myself. It was also like, what am I going to go into a deep hole of despair and end up like dragging my family down with me and impacting my wife? And like, that's just not the way. So, look, man, I can't remember who said this. There's a saying. It's like, if ever something goes wrong, try and figure out how you can turn it to your advantage. So, I've made no qualms about it. I'm a marketeer, like a storyteller by trade. And hey, listen, I had one hell of a story just land in my lap. It just it just happened to be mine, right? And so I leaned into it. I started speaking to the guys at the Bitcoin Way and said, hey, I called Tony and the guys one day and I said, hey, listen, I got an idea. You're trying to promote self custody and your services teaching people self custody. I said, I'm pretty sure I'm the best case study you're ever going to get. So, surely we can do something here. And then the next minute, I'm telling my story on stage in Prague, and then that went quite well. I love public speaking, so I kind of just played to my strengths. And then they said, hey, Rick, do you want to come and be the CMO at the Bitcoin Way? And, went on this crazy adventure with them. I was so fun, man. Like, I mean, I still work with them now. I've dialed back a little bit to work on some other projects, but yeah, we built a newsletter now that's up to like I think about 7,000 subscribers from nothing in a short amount of time. We 10x their Twitter channel. We built the Bitcoin Banter and their YouTube channel. Like that. Well, all about building YouTube channels, right? But we started with sort of 400 subscribers. I think it's clocking over 9,000 now. So it's on a great journey. And my favorite thing was never having to sell out. Like I'm quite a principled person. So, I would never start shilling, obviously, any shit coins. I didn't want to run around and ask people for donations and stuff like that because I thought, well, come on. All I've got to do is just go out and work hard and earn Bitcoin. And man, I've done one 10-year huddle. Believe me, I'll do another one standing on my head. No problem. So it's all good.
Yeah, and the thing is, the realization of being early is, I think, extremely valuable because there's so many people that still haven't gotten Bitcoin. There are people in 3-4 years that will be still like very blind to Bitcoin, and so. In a way, as you said, you're the luckiest guy in Bitcoin. It's like because you are aware of Bitcoin and you save your money in Bitcoin in 2025, which is phenomenal. Like I think people still have not really grasp of like how early it is. And, I've never really lost Bitcoin. I mean, in some instances, some small amounts, but never really in a substantial amount. But what comes to my mind is when I was in 2020, I slowly realized what Bitcoin is. And one mistake was that I didn't went into it, harder and faster because it took me over a year from a first small Bitcoin buy to going all in and going really fast. I had a lot of time back then. I didn't do a lot of work back then. It could have been so easy for me to do all the research and go harder in there in 1 month. And I still remember because after a year, I researched of like how many Bitcoin could have gotten if I would have gotten all in after 1 month and not after like a year and a few months. And that number I still haven't reached at all. And I probably maybe in whole my life will never reach it. I don't know, maybe. And so, I've never lost it, but there's an opportunity cost to it. And I think almost all of us that are listening to here have that same thing where if they would have gone all into Bitcoin once you first heard it or like within a few months, and really researched deeply, and they probably could have done that. They're like, oh yeah, I could have had like 50 times as many Bitcoin, 10 times as many Bitcoin. And so in a way, we all kind of have that small story in our head of like, oh, I could have had that many Bitcoin and could do that with it. And I'm always thinking like, what really does it change? Like, okay, maybe you could buy this and this, but what does it like really change? And could you not do this also right now with the amount of Bitcoin you already have now? It's like we have this weird comparison thing going on, and realizing that if you have Bitcoin in 2025 and you understand it, you're most likely gonna be fine.
I 100% believe that. I mean, I have a close friend who recently, wasn't really into Bitcoin, was looking for some work, an extremely talented video editor. Like I love working with him. Honestly, the guy's a genius. Um, and he wasn't maybe in the best place with his career and stuff like that. He's one of those black sheep that doesn't fit in the corporate world. He's extremely good at what he does, but he'll get very bored if the work is boring and he's not engaged. And I said, hey, man, listen, like Bitcoin's cool, right? We make cool videos, all this sort of stuff. It's interesting. And now he does some work with the Bitcoin way and works in Bitcoin. And man, just even watching him over 18 months, like his life completely changed and his demeanor and his confidence and like everything about him just 10x. And yeah, and look, even your story, I think, comes back to that point of, people don't get lucky with Bitcoin. That's not how it works. You have to make your own luck. So Bitcoin is the opportunity, but if you want to get lucky, you have to play an active role. You can't just sit there and expect good things to come your way. By doing the research, by buying Bitcoin, by getting more comfortable with the technology, by trying out new hardware wallets, if you'd have put more work in when you said you wish you had, you would have got luckier, right? If I'd have put more work in and studied every hardware wallet that came out as soon as it came out and put that work in, I'd still have my Bitcoin. So it's how lucky you get is directly proportional to how much effort you're going to put in. And then, only then will you look lucky to everyone else on the outside.
I have an interesting story I want to share with you. I just a few days ago, someone approached me like, "Oh man, how did you get Sailor on the show?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's basically super easy. You have to do for 1.5 years every single day 12 tweets to build up like Twitter following of 7,000 followers. Then start a podcast, do a podcast every single day for 6-7 months, and then while you do the tweets, while you still have a full-time job." And then all of a sudden, he out of nowhere follows you on Twitter, and then you write him, and then you have him. it's like, yeah, like put in a lot of proof of work, and you will be surprised because people always think like there's some secret connection I had to some, like maybe some like assistant or like some uncle or like whatever. I mean, it's like very unlikely because I'm an Austrian, he's an American, all of that, but. It's always like people think there are weird shortcuts and a lot of luck involved. But if you look at 99% of all success stories, they are all built on hard work. And then they put so much hard work in there that then small things happened that could be considered luck, but the luck was forced because they put in a lot of input, they put a lot of exercise, they put a lot of like, no matter if it's sports, business, like whatever success story you want to pick. And so, it's funny when people reach out like, "Oh, how can you get that big guest on?" And I was like, yeah, like just ask him and he will decide. And I'm like, "Oh, but I have 0 followers." Yeah, then this is your problem. Even if a friend of his tells him like, "Oh, you should be on his podcast," probably he won't go because you have 0 followers. Like, even if his mom says like, "Oh, you know about this podcast?" He probably says like, "I don't have a time for like going on a podcast. It's non-existing. Like, why should I go on there?" So, like the proof of work concept is probably the one that I look at the most, that like you have to put in the proof of work to actually get things. And I love that this is a concept within Bitcoin. So at the heart of Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's it. Basically, people mistake luck and proof of work. They confuse the two. It's very rarely luck. I mean, there's serendipity, right? The serendipity that he followed you, the serendipity that he reached out. Much like me getting to work with the Bitcoin way, there was serendipity that Tony reached out, probably because he knows what it's like to lose everything. And then a bit of serendipity that I just said, hey, maybe we should do some marketing together. But it always comes down to like, what action did you take? Did you put yourself in a position to get lucky? Luck never happens unless there's proof of work behind it, I think is the thing that's obvious. Yeah.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
How much I get the feeling that your father was a really important, I mean, obviously your father is always important in your life, but he comes with you to the conferences. You mentioned him a lot in the stories. What kind of role did he play in your life, was also in the Bitcoin sphere?
Yeah, well, so my dad is about as based as you can get, right? So before Bitcoin came along, when I was younger, he would sit and explain to me, the scam that is central banking, how money's created, how it's, total bullshit and all this. And I wouldn't call him a gold bug, but he was, interested in hard assets that couldn't be printed and that sort of thing. And he's also a very, very talented software engineer. So he started life, funnily enough, like working, writing code for Barclays Bank and their big check sorting machines. And this is going back to the time of like IBM 360 assembler. So we're talking like the very first sort of computers that you'd see running in companies. And ever since then, he writes in C, C++, and for our recent projects, he taught himself Docker and Node.js. And man, he's basically been an entrepreneur writing software for almost all of his life. He built an online ordering app that was like a competitor to Just Eat as well. So, he's been about, and he knows about systems and he knows about architecture. And man, me and him were just thick as thieves, right? Like we both hate the government, we both hate central banks, we both love Bitcoin, we spend forever talking about it. And we went on this whole journey together, right? Which is really nice and really fun. So, yeah, and yeah, I think that's really why, again, I feel so lucky, right? Imagine having a dad that knows all of that stuff and can teach you Bitcoin. If that's not lucky, I don't know what is.
That's awesome. And you have also, I've met you in Bulgaria, and you've showed me the lottery that you built. I think this the project that you said that you built with him now.
Yeah, well, I mean, isn't it funny, right? So, I talk about being a storyteller. Well, I was intent that this story would have like a cool ending, right? And that cool ending is I mentioned in El Salvador in our Airbnb, like playing with this project that we were building. And that's when we found out we got hacked. So, as a sort of ode to the honey badger and, at a sheer principle, we're not going to give up. We were like, we are going to finish that project sometime soon. So, obviously been busy putting our lives back together after the hack, but we finally finished that project. And what we built is a provably fair Bitcoin lottery system. Um, which might sound quite interesting to people. They might think, Rick, what the hell is a provably fair lottery? So if I was to explain it, the problem with traditional lotteries is all the trust required to make them work, right? So most people will be familiar with going and buying a lottery ticket, and then later, someone will go and pick a load of balls out of a ball machine to match up the numbers, and then you win a prize. The problem is, uh, we're relying on trust again. You have to trust that the ball machine hasn't been tampered with, or that someone hasn't weighted the balls in the ball machine, or even that this live stream of the draw that you're watching hasn't been like pre-recorded or something, right? So really trust-based. And it struck us that, hang on, there's a much better way of doing this and selecting winners in a provably fair way if we use Bitcoin's blockchain instead of a ball machine. Because the idea of the ball machine is no one knows the number, on the balls that come out when the draw happens. But with Bitcoin, nobody knows the hash of a future block, but everybody can verify it afterwards. So instead of using the ball machine to generate randomness to select a winner from a lottery, we just use Bitcoin's blockchain. So it makes it a provably fair system. So if I were to run people through it, like really, really simply, right? We can spin up little lotteries whenever we feel like it now. We put a nice front end on it. And you would come to our website and you would say, I want to enter the Bitcoin lottery. And we say, okay, no problem. You don't need to give us your name or your address or any personally identifying information. To enter, all you have to do is give us an on-chain Bitcoin address that belongs to you. And that's basically your payout address. So that's where we will pay the winnings if you get selected as the winner. Then we'll give you a QR code invoice, like a Lightning invoice, to pay for some entries. So you could buy one entry or two entries or five entries or however many. And for every entry that you purchase over Lightning, your Bitcoin payout address gets added to our list of entries. So that's how you enter the lottery. Basically, give us a Bitcoin payout address, pay a Lightning invoice, it goes into the list of entries. Once the lottery then closes, what we do, so we've stopped taking entries, we then get this list of entries and we publish it. So we timestamp it so that it can never be changed after that date and time. And we share it. So we broadcast it on Telegram, we put it on our website so that everybody can get access to the full list of entries. It's a bit like Bitcoin's blockchain, right? Everybody's node has the same copy of the blockchain. With our lottery, everybody has the same copy of the entries, and it's timestamped so it can't be fiddled with. And once we've published it, it's basically we say, right, now the very next block that gets mined on Bitcoin's blockchain, we're going to take the hash of that block and use it as our random number to select a winner from this list of entries. And then we just pay you out because you gave us a Bitcoin address to pay if you win. And we share the transaction IDs of the winning payment so everyone can verify that the winner was correct. Everybody can verify that we paid out and everything's completely transparent. So yeah, just like a really slick and simple way of running a lottery compared to the traditional method.
I love that because I've since I started my tweets, I always wrote the mission statement of I won't shut up about Bitcoin till it's the base layer of our financial system. And since I've been in Bitcoin, there's been so many new projects coming out that says like, hey, there is a part of the financial system that we can now do with Bitcoin. And lottery is a thing that I've never thought about because I don't play lotteries. I played the Bitcoin lottery. It was actually my first ever lottery that I ever played. So I've started with lotteries on a Bitcoin standard, I guess. But it is something that I'm like never thought about. And then it's like, oh yeah, you can build that with Bitcoin. actually way better because you can prove all the entries and you can prove the payout and you can actually look at all the data and you're like, oh yeah, I know I fairly won or lost. And with those, like, if you're just buying a lottery ticket and you see the TV, who says that they pick a number that they bought? They can pick a number that doesn't even exist. I'm not saying they do that, but it's possible. And so you have to trust a lot into those institutions, and they probably get highly regulated. I have no clue, but like I would imagine that they are having a big regulation hammer over them. But the nice thing is, with those Bitcoin lotteries, we don't need the regulation. And it's just like one more thing where you're like, hey, I can have a Bitcoin lottery. I don't need the fiat system, and I don't need a third party that I trust because I can prove everything. How amazing is that? Like, I just love when people get Bitcoin in real life and actually build Bitcoin as the base layer of the financial system. And then there's like one small application on top of that, like the lottery.
Well, yeah, and man, I'm glad that you get excited about the same thing I do. So the best analogy I come up with is like, um, you see a lot of people saying they're like innovating by maybe accepting Bitcoin as payment for, t-shirts, hats, all sorts of other things. And in a way, I'm not having a go, right? Like I love when people accept Bitcoin because I want to live on a Bitcoin standard. But what excites me about the lottery is a bit like you said, if you think of like taxis, right? Taxis, we used to ring for a taxi and it was all on old tech. And then Uber came along. Now, Uber didn't really change what we're doing. Taxis already exist, moving person from position A to position B using a car. But all that Uber did is said, well, we're still going to do that, but we can make it slicker because we'll use the internet instead of old communications technology. And I think we're doing a similar thing with Bitcoin, right? Lotteries existed before and they can exist again. And the premise is the same. You need to pick a winner at random. But by building it on Bitcoin, it's faster, more efficient. It's, provably fair. It's verifiable because, look at these lotteries is really interesting. Is in the UK, especially, they have dedicated point of sale machines in all these little shops. They have paper tickets. They have all of this antiquated technology that's expensive to run. And quite a lot of the value raised from the lottery is extracted by the fact that they're using inefficient technology to do it. And man, we can make this so much cooler as well. So when you go in to buy a national lottery ticket in the UK, you don't really know what it is that the lottery is supporting. It's probably being used to support good causes like building a school or funding a hospital, but you don't get any say over that. And the money just goes into like some black hole, right? Nobody knows where it's going. There's probably a CEO getting paid £500,000 a year just to pick balls out of a ball machine, which seems excessive to me. And they're using paper tickets and stuff, and it's all kind of crazy. Whereas, we're going to add loads of features to this, but what if you could vote on the charity you wanted to support when you bought your ticket? So actually, you're getting a say in where the funds go. And because we don't have expensive like ticket machines and point of sale machines in every news agent in the country, uh, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to run. I mean, we've even got this thing almost to the point where it can run entirely on a Telegram bot. So imagine a global Bitcoin lottery that just runs on Telegram. You message the bot and you say, hey, I want to buy a ticket. It says, no worries. Give us your Bitcoin payout address. You provide it. It sends you a Lightning invoice to pay for your entry. And then it texts you later all the results so that you can verify whether the right winner got paid. And man, it's so much slicker than what we're doing today.
Yeah, like 100 times slicker. And that's the whole thing with Bitcoin. You'll always have, and I don't know how you feel about that, but I almost feel like there's so many great projects out there, but a lot of the focus goes to like Treasury companies and kind of the the number go up technology stuff. How do you look at the current Bitcoin ecosystem and like what we focus on and like where kind of the Bitcoin ecosystem should be focused on?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have very little interest, to be honest, in Bitcoin treasury companies and all the TradFi stuff. I don't trust them, to start with, right? I've never trusted traditional finance. I think if you want to swim with sharks, then don't complain if you do get bitten. I actually got quite a lot of heat in my DMs recently because I was trying to warn people away from throwing their entire pension into the Smarter Web company in the UK. And I get a lot of abuse for that. But look, people were buying that at $9. It now trades at 75 cents. And I'm thinking, guys, man, imagine full porting your entire pension into a web design company. I think that might be as crazy as it sounds. So for me, there's a lot of I take issues with it because one, when you buy a treasury company stock, you don't own any Bitcoin. Your stock ownership gives you no claim over the Bitcoin that they buy. They can dilute you if they see fit. There's counterparty risk because they might lose the Bitcoin or the management just might start making crazy decisions. You're exposing yourself again to things like 6102 events where the government suddenly wants to take control of a big, large stash of Bitcoin. They've done it before with gold. So, you're leaving your Bitcoin out. Well, I mean, it's not even your Bitcoin, but, you're exposing yourself to that risk. But more than anything, the thing that plays on my mind a little bit with it is that when you're spending time looking at treasury company stocks and charts and trying to make more dollars, right, which is I find kind of backwards, right? Like imagine investing in Bitcoin to try and make more dollars. It's kind of like investing in laptops to make more typewriters. You should just upgrade to Bitcoin. But I feel it's a big distraction. We got ourselves into trouble because our focus wasn't where it should have been, which was getting better at our security, getting more comfortable with the technology, improving our skills. And I think there's a lot of people spending a lot of time and energy joining these communities and tweeting nonstop about what Michael Saylor or Andrew Webley's doing. And I'm thinking the whole time you are not putting the work in. And as we discussed earlier, you want to get lucky, you got to put the work in. So I have some concern about that. And I just find it the least interesting thing. Like Bitcoin is this crazy peer-to-peer digital cash that crosses borders and all this. I couldn't be less interested in the stock market if I'm frank.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I had over 600 episodes in Bitcoin. I had Saylor on. I was even at this 100K party, and I never bought a single treasury stock. Not one, because I do what the treasury companies do. They buy Bitcoin, not their own stock. I listen to Saylor. I listen to all the treasury company holders because they are buying Bitcoin and not like the Smarter Web company doesn't buy strategy. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know, but I assume they buy Bitcoin and not other treasury companies. And so, I like to be there, not only because, and I've explained it multiple times, but for me, there's like three main pillars in Bitcoin. And the first one is the number go up technology, which is great. Like we're getting wealthy, we're getting richer. Like that's absolutely awesome. But the second one is the most important one is the freedom aspect that I can transact with anyone, without a third party knowing about it, without a third party having the ability to stop me, and I can have my own money. The whole thing goes away if you buy a treasury company, if you keep your Bitcoin on exchange, if you even to a certain amount, the things go away if you have bad self-custody, where maybe you store your seed phrase online. Like you could even make the argument at that point also someone else is the master of your Bitcoin, because the cloud storage usually has a centralized party that controls that. I mean, outside of you having your own cloud storage, but even if you have your own cloud storage, there are still like vulnerabilities there. So I think having that second pillar of freedom not is a huge mistake for each and every one of us to make. Now, if you say like, okay, you put like a 1% or 5% of your portfolio to like gamble in some stocks, like, oh, go ahead, knock yourself out. Like, or if you have like money that doesn't get out and you can't buy direct Bitcoin, buying an IBIT or buying a treasury company, okay, I get it. It's fine. I rather pay the penalty and get real Bitcoin, but like you do you. But where it gets complicated is where the people that have only treasury companies are bullish on Bitcoin and don't have a single UTXO in their wallet. I'm like, oh, that won't end good.
No, it's crazy. And like you say, the scorecard now is measured in UTXOs, not dollars. So you want to make sure that you've got some UTXOs on your scorecard, or you are losing pace. So yeah, one of the things, I mean, you mentioned it as well, is I get it when people have their money already locked in a pension. They can't get it out, so they want some exposure to Bitcoin, so they throw some money at treasury companies. Totally makes sense. But one thing I wouldn't do anymore is pay into a pension, right? Because that, I get it. You'll get some tax benefits, and well, they say no tax, but it's only deferred tax, right? Which there's this carrot they're trying to dangle in front of you to lock your money up for the rest of your life. But I got to be honest, Robin, I don't know how you feel about, your government, but certainly I don't think like I'm going to get access to any sort of pension by the time I'm 70 years old. And I don't trust my government at all. They're going to come and raid everything. They're flat broke. So the safest place for me to, my Bitcoin stack is my pension, right? Like a pension doesn't have to be managed by someone else anymore. What I love about Bitcoin actually is it means you can fire your financial advisor, because when you have sound money that appreciates in value, all you need to do is put it in your piggy bank. And a 5-year-old can understand that concept. I don't need to pay a financial advisor a few percentage points to tell me to put money in a piggy bank, right? It's quite simple. Um, so yeah, I think we will learn on a long enough timeline that, well, as Michael says, there is no second best. If you think that you've found this magical thing that outperforms Bitcoin when nothing else will, if we think that everything goes to zero against Bitcoin, I would suggest to these people that you haven't found uh, the one exception to that rule. Everything, including MicroStrategy stock and all other stocks, will trend to zero against Bitcoin in the long term. And I'm here for the long term. I'm not trying to make fast money. I'm trying to make guaranteed money. I want a guaranteed easy win. If it takes me 10, 15 years instead of getting lucky gambling and getting there in 3, I'll take it. I need the guaranteed win for me and my family, right?
100%. And I'm curious what you think about that, because I think governments have two ways of going forward in a Bitcoin world and an increasing Bitcoin world. The one is the full socialist way, and the second one is the full capitalist way. And the one is like making bigger governments and making more control over other people. And then the other one is like decreasing the way of how governments interact with people and putting the governments basically to bare minimum, to like a service provider of people. And I think the countries that go with the capitalist way will succeed massively and will be very flourishing, and the socialist will just go bust, as we've learned from history. They always do. And I'm curious how you think about the impact of Bitcoin the impact that Bitcoin has on governments, and the way kind of forward, and that you also see like there might be different solutions to how governments deal with higher debt and less flourishing in the country, and how you look at the whole topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, socialism doesn't work. As Margaret Thatcher famously said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of everybody else's money, right? So, I'm with you. All I want from
I
my
never
government,
heard that. That's great.
man, Margaret Thatcher was based like she would have been a Bitcoiner. She would have got it instantly. But yeah, what do I want from the state? Similar to you, Robin, right? Like maybe they collect my bins on time, and maybe they fix some potholes in the road. I mean, by the way, I'm not even convinced I want them to do that. I think private enterprise would still do a better job. But largely, like what I don't want is some deranged politicians who think that they can control and influence what I think, how I live my life, my values, and interfere with every single aspect of my life. And the only reason they've been able to do that, especially in the UK, is because of printed money that gives them this ability to, grow the state to this huge leviathan that employs, I mean, something like 35% of the population in the UK is employed by the government. It's completely insane, absolutely insane. So I would love to see tiny government just doing very, very menial, basic jobs to keep society ticking over. And other than that, get the hell out of the way. And I mean, look, there's another reason just to, like the lottery excites me, right? Is because let's take El Salvador. At the moment, they run a lottery, right, which they use to raise money to maybe pay for hospitals and bridges and God knows what other infrastructure that Naib is interested in building. But the way it works at the moment is really not sovereign. So it's actually an Israeli company called Tenlot who runs the El Salvadorian lottery, right? And that means that there's some middlemen involved in these things that extract a lot of value from the population of El Salvador and take money out of the country. Now I think, well, hang on a minute. Like, Naib, I'll just give you the code, right? Like, you don't even have to pay for it. We will just give you the code. You could run your own Bitcoin lottery. And now all of a sudden you have a global lottery that even Europeans and people in America and wealthy nations could play. And instead of raising money for schools and hospitals from just your own population and letting, some foreign company run the lottery and extract value from it, you could just run your own global Bitcoin lottery. And maybe there's a first mover advantage there for a nation to say, hang on, yeah, look, we can use Bitcoin to advance their society better. There's better ways of doing things. And it's like fire or the wheel. Like, if you don't adopt it, you are just going to fall behind. So, and the only other thing I'd say, man, on governments is I do think a lot of Bitcoiners waste a lot of time trying to orange pill politicians. I just think it's a bit of a pointless thing to do because you're trying to get turkeys to vote for Christmas. If we accept that Bitcoin will make the state a lot smaller and a lot less powerful, why would these people want to adopt it? Why would they give up their main source of power? And look, the other thing is, I believe in Bitcoin is so powerful. They can scream and kick and hate it all they want. They are not going to stop it. So I think if we put more time and effort into trying building like privacy tech, freedom tech, rather, because we're not asking for permission. I could not care less what any politician says I should or shouldn't do with my Bitcoin, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Like, they are not the gatekeepers anymore. They're not the rule makers. I listen to the protocol rules, not politicians' rules. So yeah. I think, yeah, like you say, the companies that adopt Bitcoin and go full steam capitalism will massively outperform all the others.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And one question that I asked each and every one of my returning guests, as you after 2 years now are, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance?
Outside of Bitcoin, what have I learned? God, I mean, man, I spend almost my entire life in Bitcoin. That's actually a challenging question. I think I've actually learned to enjoy the moment a bit more. Similar to what we talked about earlier, is I've realized that the more time I spend with friends and family, that's what adds a huge amount of value to my life. So, we've got a little one on the way. So I'll become a dad in a couple of months. I'm like super excited about that. And, Bitcoin gives us that opportunity as well to maybe reclaim some of our time. So I'd love to see more people like prioritize their health, prioritize their family and that sort of thing. Because at the end of the day, isn't that the whole point? That we live good, fulfilling lives and build the projects we want to work on. That's what I hope everybody can get out of Bitcoin.
100%. It's if if you're not using Bitcoin to get more life, then you're just trying to get more Bitcoin for nothing. Then there's no point to stacking sats. Like, stacking sats is not the goal. Stacking life, I guess, is the goal.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. Like, so with the lottery, me and my dad were not trying to even make any money. We're just doing it for the culture because we think like Bitcoin is money. You can make small payments and buy lottery tickets with it. And one thing I'd ask of the audience, if they're interested, is in November, we're going to run another one in the UK. So everyone will get a chance to play. And they were calling it the free speech lottery, right? Because we're going to try and raise money for free speech organizations in the UK, because you might have noticed we have a bit of a problem. We're getting arrested for naughty tweets over here. So if we can raise some money, try and push back a little bit, have some fun on the way. We're just going to, again, try and get lucky, lean in, do some cool stuff, see what happens.
That's freaking awesome. Free speech is so important, and it's sad for me to see what's going on in the UK. Like, it surprises me also. It's something like why is that going on? Like, what's going on there? And it seems like really weird. I mean, I have no clue about the UK. I only hear about it on Twitter and on some other services. But it's like, why is this even a case? Like, what? Just for like someone saying something on the internet? Why do you need to? Like, there are edge cases, of course, that you can always make, but like the cases I heard, it's just like, yeah, that's freedom of speech, and you shouldn't do anything with that. And I might be extreme because I think you should be able to say anything, like everything that you want to say, even if it's the most ridiculous thing ever. You should be able to say it, because I think in the individual, and I think in critical thinking, that if you say a crazy thing, that everyone should decide for their own if it's a crazy thing or not. And I don't think there should be a third party protecting us for like, oh, like that you should not say that because you need a license for that, or like, oh, you should not say that because that's a dangerous thing to say. We don't want to remember that.
Yeah, it's crazy here, man. I think the UK arrested like 12,000 people for social media posts last year, which, by the way, is considerably more than places like North Korea or, Russia, who our politicians would believe are, the worst, most authoritarian states. So it's got to the point where it is absolutely ridiculous. You need a license to even own a chicken in the UK. They're currently discussing whether you need a license for a slingshot, which is like a kid's toy. It's full 1984 in the UK. So all we're trying to do is like push back a little bit, raise some attention to it, and hey, maybe you'll win some BTC if you play along. So yeah, we'll try and have a bit of fun and try not get in too much trouble if we can. Yeah.
Don't own a chicken if you don't have a license. That's crazy.
Yeah, we found some loopholes around that, which we'll explain a bit closer to the time. But yeah, we think we'll be okay.
That's crazy. That you even have to find a loophole for that. That's absurd. Thank you so much. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question. I mean, it's an easy one, I think, for you to answer. Are you living on a Bitcoin standard? Why or why not?
Yes, as much as humanly possible, right? There are some things you can't avoid. But yeah, because I don't think it makes any sense to measure value in fiat currency, and you can't buy my time with government printed coupons anymore. I'm just not interested. It's Bitcoin or nothing.
I love that. Thank you so much, Rick, for being on. It was a pleasure. Making an update from almost 2 years ago reminds me that my podcast is soon getting, oh gosh, in a month my podcast will be 2 years old. That's crazy. Really cool. Then yeah, thank you so much for being on. And before I let you go, where can people find you and find all your projects and find the lottery?
Sure. So the lotteries are like pop-ups, right? So you'll just see me tweet about them. They'll be up for a while. You can play them and then we close them down. But what I'll do is I'll send you a link, Robin, to the BTC Balkans one we ran, because there's some details there on how it worked. Shows how much money we raised and how many entries we sold. So follow me on Twitter is where I do most of my stuff. It's at @Messitt, which I'm sure we can put in the show notes because it's hard to spell. But yeah, and if people are interested in free speech, we'd love your support. We're not trying to make money. We're just trying to give Keir Starmer a bit of grief if we can. So yeah, thanks for having me, Robin. Honestly, man, it's been great to catch up again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.
This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.